Hello everybody, my name is CulBlu and I'm bringing out this video of me talking about a board game, and today, whoops, wrong camera. Today we're going to be talking about the board game Nusfjord, which you saw displayed just there a few seconds ago. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give my review. I did a playthrough of it, and I'm probably going to do a campaign playthrough of it a little bit later, but we'll see when I decide to do that one. But essentially, then we're going to get our background music started so we can start talking about this board game here. So, over here we have our board set up, so please don't be intimidated by what you see here. This game is actually a lot more straightforward than it might seem. But essentially what you are trying to do is you are trying to score the most points, and you get victory points by having building points, points from buildings. You get victory points by having money left over, and you also will gain victory points by having your shares, which are down here, shares on their share side. You will lose victory points if you have your shares on the unissued share side. So it behooves you, essentially, to make sure that you have all of your shares flipped over. And it doesn't matter where your shares are, you just want to flip over so they're not negative points for you. Actually, it does. Because other players can get your shares and get more points from shares because they bought your share. But I'll explain that a little bit more later. So I'm not going to do a full comprehensive how to play, but I will essentially walk through some of the phasing of the game. So that way those who might be watching this video try to see if this is a game for you, can have a general idea of what's going on. And then we can kind of talk about a few more details as we go along. So starting off, like I said, I'm going to just walk through a few turns here. I do have a solo setup right now. And when you do play solo, you will use the 1 to 2 player side of the board. You will also use the solo game marker here, the round tracker. There's two sides. There's the basic side and the advanced side. I'm going to play on the basic side, or the non-advanced side. And then also another thing to note is when you do play solo, you do use this copy in action marker board. There's two sides to it. One is for the 5-player side, one is for the 4-player side. But when you're playing solo, the rulebook specifically calls out that you need to add this in so that we can copy the actions. Also, another thing to note is that this corner here shows that you can copy any action that is taken up by another player that's on the board. That's an important distinction because if you play the advanced side, and if I flip this over and play the advanced side, not only am I adding a third set of markers to the game, which I'll explain that a little bit later, but you also, when you do a copy action, it corresponds to a very specific column, and that's an important thing to note. It tripped me up in my previous playthrough when I was testing it offline, so I wanted to point that out now. All right. Anyway, like I said before, I have a solo setup here, so if you play multiple players, just adjust accordingly. But going into what we have for the solo playthrough, I will be playing the red player as my primary player, the blue player is my secondary player. But on my turn, I will essentially be taking these 3 pawns, and I will essentially be using my actions, doing my actions. Once I'm right out of the actions, the round is over. I do the kind of cleanup stage of things, and then I move from there into the next round, which this little ship will move over. And then I move into the next round with the blue player, and I'll essentially be playing as if I'm still the red player, but playing with the blue player instead. And what will happen is the red player's tokens will be out here on the board. Let's say they have them out like that. And I am only allowed to have 1 token in each of these spaces as determined by this number up here on the 1 to 2 player side. On the other side, just to kind of give a contrast, on the other side, you can have 3 different people here, or you can do this up to 3 times. So you can have 2 here, somebody else can have 1 there. You can have both of yours here, so on and so forth. But that's based on the number up here in this corner. Just want to point that out. But going back over here, what I'm essentially saying is that if the red player, my previous player, had done these actions, then when the blue player goes, when I go as the blue player, then of course I cannot do that action again. So I'm kind of blocking myself. Current turns are going to block future turns for me, essentially. So that is, generally speaking, kind of some of the changes here for the solo game. But going back into everything else is kind of standard. So like I said, I'm going to go ahead and walk through the phasing of things around the round run through, if you will. So throughout the course of play, every round is going to consist of basically 3 parts, 3 phases. There's going to be the fishing phase, the working phase, and the returning home phase. During the fishing phase, I'll go ahead and play it out now. First thing I'll do is I will look at my little board at the bottom of my main player board. So everybody's going to get 1 of these. And I will get 3 fish. So I get the lowest number that is currently showing. And in this case, I will be getting 3 fish. Now, these 3 fish are not going to go directly to me because I have my own personal supply. And from my personal supply is where I'll spend resources. So if I need to spend wood or gold or fish, I must spend it from my personal supply and nowhere else. But this fish does not go directly to my personal supply. Instead, it follows this distribution here that's listed on the fishing phase. And first things first, I must give fish to any elders that I have here on my elder board. I have none, so nothing happens. And then I must give fish to each of my shares in foreign possession. So foreign possession could be if I had a share that was up here on the board that nobody's claimed, or if I had a share that was in somebody else's inventory, somebody else had taken from the board, they had collected it, then I would have to pay a fish to that share that that player has. Even though they have it, it's still my share that I'm responsible for. So I must pay a fish to it. In this case, there are no foreign shares, so therefore nothing happens. And then I pay fish to my shares in my own supply. So we do this like so. So there we go. And then any leftover fish will go into your reserve. My reserve has a max of 8 fish. So if I go over 8 fish, then it just gets wasted. It goes out of the game or it goes back into supply. And then finally, any leftover fish goes back into the general supply, which I have it all off to the side over here. This little GameGenic token silo. I'm not sponsored, by the way, but hey, GameGenic, reach out to me if you want to sponsor me or anything. And then after that's done, after everybody's done that, we take all of the fish that are on the shares here and we put it into our personal supply. So all the fish on our personal shares, we put into our personal supply. If I had a share up here, as I mentioned before, if I paid a fish to it, it will go back into the box, back into the general supply. So, and if I paid a fish to another player, because they have my share, then that will be their fish that they can put into their own, or that they will put into their own personal supply. So that is kind of the main economy of getting fish. Now, moving on, like I said before, I have actions that I can do, and I will be selecting my actions. There's a plethora of different actions here, but they're all pretty straightforward. The gold action is essentially I put my little token here and I get 1 gold. Pretty straightforward. The transfer reserve is I put a token there and I take all the fish that are here in my reserve and I get to pull it into my personal supply. Clearly, I don't want to do that right now because it's not going to be very effective. I can hold 8 fish here. I don't really need the fish at this moment unless I was really desperate, so that's fine. Next, I can serve fish. I'll explain that one now. When you serve fish, and we're going to go ahead and assume that I have 10 fish here. So we're fast forwarding and we're assuming that I have 10 fish. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And when you serve fish, what happens is you'll look at this part on the board here and you'll look at the lowest plate and you can put a fish on that plate. If you do put a fish on that plate, you must put enough fish here to equal the number that's there. So in this case, I must pay 2 fish to put a fish on that plate. The representation of that is that we'll leave 1 fish there to show that that plate is full of food now. And this fish will go back into the general supply. So we're assuming that I did that. And I can do this as many times as I want on the next plate going up. So in this case, if I want to do that, and then let's say this one's a 3 plate, so I got to put 3 fish here. And this one's a 3 plate, so I got to put 3 fish there. I don't have to, but I can choose to stop if I want to. But in this case, I just want to fill it all up. So now we just kind of clean it up a little bit. And we put all this fish back in the reserve. And I filled 3 plates, so I will get $1 per plate. So in this case, I get $3. And that's it. That's the serving fish action. It allows you to put fish here, and this is very important for the elder actions, which we'll explain once we get over here to the elder, or take an elder. Moving on from there, the next action that we can do will be to build a building. Build a building is pretty straightforward. There are buildings over here, which I will try to zoom in on. Oh, wrong button. There we go. There are buildings here, and these buildings will have different, these are elders. Sorry, meant over here. There are buildings over here, and these buildings will have different things. These are the B buildings. These are the A buildings over here, and they'll have different requirements. So this one costs 1 wood, 1 fish, and 1 gold. This one, same thing. This one costs 2 wood and 2 fish to build. They have an effect right here. This one says after you build a building, 2 wood into your reserve, which is pretty nice, and is worth 1 victory point at the end of the game. On the B buildings over here, the B buildings are generally better buildings, or usually better buildings, but it depends on what you're looking for, what effect you need. but essentially they'll be more expensive. So this one's 2 wood, 2 fish, and 2 gold. And it says after you issue a share, I get to build a ship. So anytime I issue a share from this point, or when I have that built, from that point forward, whenever I issue a share, I can also do a build a ship action for free. And by for free, I mean I still have to pay for the ship that I'm building, but I don't have to put my token on it, which is pretty nice. It is worth 3 points at the end of the game. And that's a build a building action. So from there, there's 2 spots for it. So it can happen up to twice. Next one is issue a share. So issue a share is the kind of one of the cool puzzles in the game. When you issue a share, you take one of your uninsured shares from your board and you flip it to the share side and you put it there. And this will reward you with 2 gold. So I get 2 gold for that. And then in the future, if other players put their token here or do the buy all shares action, which is the next action here. If they do the buy all shares action, then they'll take all the shares that are here and they'll be able to put it into their own supply. Now it won't be for free because they have to pay $1 per share that they take, and it's an all or nothing. It's not I want to buy 2 of these shares and leave the rest. And then, nope, it's all or nothing. You either spend all the money to get every one of them or you don't. So it's all or nothing for the buy all shares. And the benefit of that is, as I mentioned before, when you're distributing, when you're distributing out fish, you have to distribute fish onto all the shares that exist. First for the elders, then for your foreign shares, as in not in your own board, not in your own possession. So that's whether it's here or whether it's in front of another player. And the benefit of people taking your share is that they'll be able to get fish from you for the rest of the game, which is pretty cool. I think it's a pretty neat kind of interaction in a game that you don't really interact a ton. You just kind of block each other or get in each other's way, so to speak. I guess you do block people because you put a thing where they want to go. And then on rounds 4 and 5 out of 7, this will cost 1 less gold. So if there's 3 shares in here and you do it on round 4 or 5, it'll cost you $2 to take all 3 shares. And if you do it on round 6 or 7, is minus 2 gold. So if there's 3 shares inside of here, hypothetically, then you'll spend 1 gold to get all 3, which is pretty cool. So kind of diminishing returns, but the game kind of balances it out a little bit. And these are worth 1 victory point at the end of the game. If they're on their share side, they cost you 1 victory point. They're on the unissued share side. Moving on next, deforest is essentially, you put your token there and you remove 1 forest from your board. So your board starts with 4 total. So 2 here, 1 here, 1 here, 2 stacked on top of each other. And that's because the nature of some of these, the reforest action, which we'll talk about last, you put 2 on top of each other to represent 2 forests. So it kind of saves a little bit of space table-wise, which I appreciate. But anyway, it says remove 1 forest and get +5 wood. So I can remove this 1 forest and get 5 wood. Or I can remove this 1 forest right here and get 5 wood. And wood is a limited resource here. So you can have a maximum of 12 wood in your personal supply. You can have unlimited fish and unlimited gold, which is pretty cool. But your wood, you can have a max of 12. So you have to watch that pretty carefully. So that is the deforest action. Remove 1 forest and you get 5 wood. Thin out is kind of similar to the deforest action, except for instead of removing forest, what it does is you look at how many forests you have and you get 1 wood per forest that you have. In this case, I have 4 forests. So I get 1, 2, 3, 4 wood. And boom, that's done. I've done the action. So that is the thin out action. And then next is reforest. Allows you to place 2 forests. So you take a stack of 2. Allows you to put 2 forests on a free double space. Like that. Now granted, when you do that, you'll have less spaces to put your buildings if you are building buildings. So you'll definitely want to cut those down eventually, or you'll definitely need to cut those down eventually. But the benefit of that is if you look real close here, it's a little bit hard to see on the camera there, but these are worth -1 victory point for every exposed one that's showing at the end of the game. So the forest covers it up, or a building can cover it up, so you can kind of approach it however you want. And that is that action. Next is build a ship. Build a ship is simply build a ship. The ships have costs similar to buildings. They're worth victory points at the end of the game. And there's a limited amount of ships. So if all the ships are gone for the one that you want to build, too bad, you cannot build that ship anymore. The schooner, which is the biggest ship, you can pay 8 wood and 8 fish to build, or you can spend $4 to build. So there's an or there, which is pretty nice. And then the cutter, you spend 6 wood and 1 gold, and then you get that. And the sloop, you spend 2 wood and 2 fish. So let's say hypothetically, if I were to buy the cutter, let's say I had the resources and I paid for it, hypothetically, after I took the build a ship action, I'll put it there like so, and it'll show my lowest number now is a 6. So that means when I go around to the fishing phase at the top of the round, I'll get 6 fish to distribute out instead of the 3 that I had previously. So that is how you increase the number of fish that you have kind of coming in and flowing in. And then finally, take an elder. So take an elder. This is where you kind of get into the one of the other puzzle aspects of the game, one of the other meat bits of the game, which is a weird way to say that. And when you take an elder, essentially what you do is you get to choose any of these elders that are here. And I'll try to zoom in. There we go. You take any of these elders that are listed here. And with any of these elders, you will be able to take them and add them into your elder board. So in this case, if I wanted to take this elder is a pond builder. It says distribute 4 fish plus 1 fish per building as you would during the fishing phase. So let's say I take that guy. Oops, there we go. And I'm gonna put him there. And when you do acquire an elder through the take an elder, you get to also use them immediately. So in this case, I'm gonna take this fish because the elder is gonna eat one of the fish that are here on the serving trays, and they're gonna eat it. I'm gonna put it right there in the little marker there. And then I get to do the action. So distribute 4 fish plus 1 per building as if you're doing your fishing phase. In this case, I'll just get 4 fish like so. And then I'll distribute. First elders get to eat. Then my shares that are in foreign possessions get to eat. I have none, so or get a fish, so I have none. Then my shares will get fish. And then any overflow will go into my reserve. And that is done. And then these fish, of course, will go into my personal supply. And that's it. Now, of course, this means that when you do acquire an elder, if there's no food here, then the elder will not activate. So you do need to make sure that you manage this to make sure that your elders are activating and you give them the ability to activate. An additional note is, let me just play this out here. Let's say my next action I do is I'm going to be to serve fish. So because I want to fill this fish bowl up here, I'm going to go ahead and put 1 fish there and then 2 fish there. Like so, then that's it. So I filled 2 plates. I put 2 fish there because that was a 2 plate, by the way. And there we go. That's it for the action. And then I do my last action. You can also use your elders that are on your own personal elder board, like so. So I can activate that elder again. Now, the reason why I put fish there first was one, to just demonstrate how that works. Again, just remind people of the server fish action. And second is to kind of show why this is important. Now that I've done that, I've activated my pond builder. The pond builder will eat the lowest, or the lowest cover, or the highest covered plate, I should say. And then I get to do it again. Distribute 4 fish. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I have no buildings here, so I get no extras. And then we do a distribution again. Before I do, the elder, once they're filled up with fish, what happens is they'll clear. And they'll put 1 fish into your reserve. And that's how that happens. So now I gotta feed the fish. So put a fish there, put a fish there, put a fish there, put a fish there, and that's it. And so on and so forth. So as you can see, you kind of need to manage your actions and try to take your 3 action points and get the most that you can out of them by doing things like getting an elder. Yes, getting an elder only acquires an elder, but also lets you activate them too. So you can use that to kind of chain an action, maybe build a building, let you get some free stuff or do some free things. And you can kind of go down the very crunchy puzzle that ends up showing up from there. So that is, oops, wrong button. There we go. So that is a kind of Nusfjord. So now, some of the things that I want to talk about on this one, now that we have an idea of how to play, some of the things I want to talk about would be kind of the things that I like about this game, the things that I don't like about this game, and then of course I want to compare this game to some of the other games that ring in this kind of arena, specifically Fields of Arle. But we'll talk about that once we get to it. So first and foremost, the things that I like about this game, I appreciate greatly how kind of small the puzzle is. To be more specific, it's not. I'm not saying that this is a very simple, straightforward, basic game. But what I'm saying is that compared to some of the other games that I have in my collection, and also especially compared to Fields of Arle, which I'll talk about later, the decision space is very like compact and like together and like just kind of, hey, I need to do this action, which lets me get an elder, and the elder lets me build a building, and that building lets me get some free resources. It's kind of like a shorter point to point between like doing an action that can chain into another action that can chain into another action. So that feels really good, and I like how like together and how tight that is. I think it benefits greatly. Or sorry, let me say it this way. I think I came into this game coming straight from Fields of Arle, and I'll definitely talk about this a lot more later, I promise. With the impression that it would be on the same level complexity, but that was completely not true. And I appreciate that this game is simpler. Now, it doesn't mean that this game is simple. This game is simpler. And that I think is a really nice thing. I know a lot of people compare this game to Glass Roads. I never played Glass Roads. As far as complexity goes, people compare the complexity of this to Glass Roads. I've never played Glass Roads, but that's what people keep saying, so I'll take their word for it. But I do appreciate what this game is offering, what the decision space is offering. And on that note, you do have the decks of cards I mentioned before, and you'll notice that these decks of cards are limited, are finite. And one of the things that I was kind of fearful of, which is why I'm glad I got the big box, was I was kind of fearful of like, hey, maybe I'll just run out of game. You see all the buildings, you kind of know the combinations you want. Yeah, there's randomness in like what shows up, but the fact of the matter, or the thing that helps fight that potential shortcoming of things kind of being very samey is the fact that you have in the big box, you have all the decks that the game has come out with, and these are all the decks that the game has come out with. So this is 7 decks total of different variability, and you can also mix and match these if you really want to. The mix and match is you essentially take all of the A's of one deck and then all of the B's of something else and all of the C's of something else and mix and match that way. I don't think the game recommends you mix and match by shuffling all the A's together and then doing that way. Although, actually, let me check. Because they have variants that are listed in the back of this rulebook, and I appreciate the fact that they listed the variants and acknowledged the variants. So let's see. It says match and rematch. It says each of the 3 buildings contains 18 of these, and those are those. However, use all the, oh, so you can. Okay, all right. Well, I take it back. Yeah, it says you may agree beforehand to use 3A and 2B buildings from each of the 3 decks, or 3 different decks. However, all additional buildings via turnover tiles should be drawn from a single deck. Yeah. So it's just basically saying that you can do a different mix and match. So so you can mix and match. There's different ways you can mix and match, and I appreciate that greatly. That means that the game changes drastically based on what buildings show up. And that helps the game stay nice and fresh, stay nice and new. You got a different puzzle. I've only had the opportunity to play, my first few games were with the salmon deck, which is what this one is. So this deck, and I played I think 3 games to kind of learn. The first game, of course, was completely wrong. Second game was like, all right, getting better. Third game was like, oh yeah, this is pretty fun. And then the 4th game, I played on in the recording that you all saw previously. And there's different decks. So I played with the salmon deck 3 times, and then I played with this deck for the first time. This is the deck that they recommend you play your first games with, which is the mackerel deck. The game was a blast. Like I was starting to feel a little bit like this is getting very samey with the salmon deck, because like I said, I did my playthroughs with it and learning and stuff. And so okay, I saw that building before. Okay, I know that building exists. Maybe it shows up, and oh, hopefully that building comes out. And that is good, because that means that there's a lot of variety, even if you play solo. And on top of that, when you do play solo, you only have the buildings that show, or that are showing here, that are going to be in the game. And then you get your C buildings, kind of the same variability that they show up in normal games. But I'm mentioning that because when you play with a higher player count than 2 players, then whenever somebody builds a building or buys a building, at the end of the round, you'll fill in from the respective card decks, you'll fill in the spaces for what's left over. Or, sorry, let me take it back. You'll fill in based on what the card says, based on what the token says. And I'll show you what I mean here in a second. 1 second. Oh, that's the wrong button. There we go. Okay, so if I switch my camera over to here, you can see this little tile here. So if you're playing 3 players, you'll use the 3 player tiles there. And on the side of these are for the first, second, and third player, and everybody will have one of these in front of them. And you'll take the round marker, which I think is a very clever way to handle this, by the way. You'll take the round marker and you'll put it here. And this is on round 1, nothing special, just play round 1. And then round 2, nothing special, just play round 2. On round 3, it says right here in pretty small text, can you read that? Kinda. It says add 3 A buildings to the display. So then you add 3 A buildings to the display. And then round 4, you go back over here. It says draw 3 C buildings into your hands. And then round 5, add 2 B buildings to the display. So you kind of refill the deck based on what the tiles are saying. Refill the display, I should say, based on what the tiles are saying. And I think that that's a really clever way of doing that because one, it's variable. So it's variable from game to game. So that way you can kind of maintain some balance and kind of have a certain expectation of what's coming out when. And then 2, you also have the benefit of players not having to remember every single small rule because you have a nice player aid right here in the form of your round marker that shows when your turn is, what's happening on this round, what's happening on that round, so on and so forth. And I think that's pretty brilliant. Like I like that so much. Like here's a 4-player one. It's a square instead of a triangle, so it's nice different shapes, and they have the markings on it. And I think that's a brilliant way to kind of handle when do things refresh. So I appreciate that greatly. Now also, solo players are not left out because here's a solo player tile. On this side is a basic solo game or normal solo game. On the other side is the advanced solo game, which you can see you play with 3 player colors instead of 2. I don't think I explained the player color thing, but at any rate, it gives you some variability. So you can make the game harder by playing the advanced side, which you'll have more blockages happening in front of you, and you have to be a lot more tactical and a lot more long-term planning. And I like that a lot. So there's a lot to love about this game. To try to summarize, I like the puzzle that it gives you in the amount of time that it gives you the puzzle. I feel like it's a very brief puzzle, but it's a very nice decision space that you're stuck in. And I like that. I appreciate that. I appreciate the variety that you get from the cards, from the different decks. And I also like just kind of the flow of the game. Like I think it flows very well. I think it does what it's trying to do. It doesn't get in your way. The game kind of takes a step back and lets you just kind of play and explore. Try to figure out how to get your efficiency puzzle going with your fish and your wood and your gold management. And it lets you just kind of have fun. It's not quite a sandbox, but it lets you have fun in this space that it gives you. Now, as far as things that I don't like the fact that there's not as many elders. So I spent a lot of time talking about how much variety there is in the buildings, and I appreciate that greatly, but the elder variety is a little bit lackluster. So I'll bring the camera back over here. There are elders that you'll play with every single game, and those elders will be elders 1 through 7, because when you play solo, you play with elders 1 through 7. They are marked on their bottoms there. You can see by the little picture here. So this is on a, let me see. Sorry, these are the varieties here. So you see here, you only use number 18 if you're playing a 5-player game. Sorry, drop this stuff. You only use the number 18 if you're using a 5-player game. With a 1-player game or higher, use number 6, use number 4, and so on and so forth. So there's different varieties and different elders with different abilities. And there is a variant that's mentioned in the rule book. Is it mentioned in the rule book? No, I think it's mentioned in the forums. It's mentioned in the Bork and Geek forums, where people just say, yeah, you can just shuffle the elders and just kind of throw them out there. But the biggest issue with doing that is that some of the elders are more powerful in a smaller player count than they are in a bigger player count. So you have to be very careful with balancing that, of course, because it can swing wildly with your scores. But the primary thing is that the elders are kind of the same elders every time. So of all the games that I played, I've seen the same 7 elders, and it's been like, I like a little bit more variety. Now, they did not leave you out to dry with that, because they do give you variety. They is in Lookout Games. They do give you variety with, they give you, some elders have 2 copies of them. Let's see. So number 14, there's 2 different elders here. There's the Inspector and the Carpenter. And when you play with a 5-player game, you can choose if you want this one or this one. And that's pretty cool. Like, it gives you that variety. Also, it gives you the variety for the L's here. The L's, it gives you the opportunity to use one of these instead, so you can kind of swap these out with the other ones. And again, it's just kind of in the vein of giving more variety and not letting it become too samey. It gives you some variety here, but nowhere near as much variety and nowhere near as much kind of flavor or like just different variability as you get from the actual building decks. And I understand that to a big degree because the elders, it's going to be the same elders. They're going to do the same powers, like build an extra building or chop down a forest and get some gold. And it's kind of the same effects. It's basically the same as this board over here. So it's static. And these elders will change in their usefulness depending on what kind of cards show up, what kind of strategy you're going for, and what kind of things you need. So it's fine that it's static in the long run, I guess, but I would have liked to seen more variety, especially considering how much variety there ends up being with all the different decks here for the buildings that you can get. So that's on the one thing. The other thing too that I don't like about this game is I kind of don't like how the decision space exists, if that makes sense. Like I'm kind of torn because like on the one hand I love the decision space, but I also don't like how the decision space exists. And I guess let me explain it the best I can. I feel like when I look at this game, I expect there to be more steps to do things, and there's not more steps to do things. Now that is a negative, mostly in the perception that I have of the game. That's not necessarily negative in like this game's designed badly, but this is kind of tying into the comparison of this game to Fields of Arle. In the game of Fields of Arle, I feel like there's like 3 or 4 steps before I can do a thing, and I see the 3 or 4 steps and then I do the thing, and it feels great. In this game, I want there to be 3 or 4 steps to do a thing, but 1, there's not enough time in the game to make 3 or 4 steps. 2, that'll be extremely tedious for there to be 3 or 4 steps to do things in this game. And then 3, this game just lets you kind of put your piece here to get an elder. So I'll use taking an elder as an example. Taking an elder, I feel like my brain wants it to be 5 steps to get an elder, but the reality is it doesn't need to be 5 steps. I guess the 5 steps is putting fish over here, really. So when you take an elder, not only do you get the elder, but you also get to immediately use them by feeding them if there's fish over here in the hall, in the food hall, of course. And then once you do, you get to do the effect immediately. So you effectively can chain things together easily if you have a building that lets you get an elder, and then that elder lets you build another building, and then you build another building, lets you get another thing, and that other thing lets you do something else. And there's some really cool moments of like kind of bouncing your actions and like kind of chain it together. And I love that. I love that a lot. But I feel that, I don't know, sometimes I feel dirty just like putting a single token here, taking a whole elder lets me do something really cool, and then, feeding them a fish and then doing really cool broken things or things that feel broken. In the context of the game though, you only have 21 actions because there's 7 rounds and you have 3 actions every round. So you only have 21 actions. So it's not like, hey, I'm breaking the game so much that I scored 1,000 points. No, my highest scoring game in this game, I think has been under 35, 34 points. My highest score in this game ever has been 34 points in my 5 playthroughs. In my 5 playthroughs, my highest score is 34 points for one single game. My lowest score, let's see. Nope, that's not what I wanted. My lowest score, I'm pretty sure was 24. Okay, that's not bad. My lowest score was 24. So I feel like the point scoring space is somewhere between like 20 on the low side and like 50 on the high side. I feel like a 50-point game is like wow, you just got everything perfect. Oh my gosh, how'd you do that? Whereas on the 20 side is like, okay, you existed, you played the game, you're welcome. And that I feel is fine. It's just, I don't know. I feel like I want there to be like more steps. Like it's weird because like I appreciate greatly that there's not more steps, but I'm still calling it as a con because I feel like I look at this game and I see more steps, but there's not more steps. And then it feels like something's wrong. It's like a mismatch of like expectation versus what the game's actually given. So maybe that's on me. I still count it as a con though, because outside of that, I don't think there's a ton of extra cons. Some people have said that this game does tend to be less kind of, interactive with multiplayer. I've only played it solo, so I don't have any context for that part. But what I mean by that is like outside of somebody just taking the spot that you wanted, or outside of somebody just putting the fish out here or taking the fish that you might have wanted to use for your elder, there's not really much player interaction. It's just typical Euro stuff of like putting your worker down, blocking somebody from a thing, taking a building somebody wanted. So there's not a ton of player interaction from that regard, as in I do a thing that directly impacts you, outside of I took a building that you wanted. So that's in my mind a good thing, especially for the group that I play with, whereas like, some people like to be like, kind of in your face, take that. But for the most part, a lot of us don't really like to take that aspect of things. We just kind of want to play our game, do our puzzle, see if we can do it better than everybody else, and that works out for us. So take that how you will. The three cons, just to kind of summarize those a little bit, is that the variety of the elders doesn't exist, and that's a little frustrating. There are some variants that can help address that problem. The other part is that I feel that this game looks like it should be more complex than it is, but it's not, and that just makes me feel uneasy. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop playing the game. It just makes me feel a little uneasy. And the last thing is that the player interaction, from what I heard, and when I say from what I heard, I mean actually from what I read, different people say, the player interaction is kind of like just typical Euro player interaction. So there's not as much like I built a thing to help you build a thing. It's more like I took the building you wanted, and it's like, shoot, foiled again. So take that how you will. So that is kind of that. So I did mention that I wanted to compare this game to Fields of Arle towards the end, and I'll go ahead and do that now. So Fields of Arle is a game that I don't want to say I just kind of accidentally stumbled upon, but somebody described it as a sandbox farming game. And I said, okay, I like sandbox games. So I went and tried it out and I played it, and it took a little bit, but once I got through the rules and understanding what was happening, I really, really liked what it was offering. And I felt like the decision space that it gave you was pretty wide and vast. It gave you the correct amount of restrictions, in my opinion, for Fields of Arle. And I just enjoy Fields of Arle quite a bit. And I went into this game with the highs of Fields of Arle, expecting kind of a similar Fields of Arle, but with fish. And that was my mistake. I say that was my mistake because this game is not offering a Fields of Arle. This game is offering something much more middle of the road, much more mid-weight, as a lot of people have said, and I do wholeheartedly agree. It is not offering something as expansive as upgrade your wood cutting so that we can cut more wood later on, and then you can use that wood to convert into peat, and use that peat to convert into points, and use those points to like buy ships or something. I don't know. And that's kind of how Fields of Arle works. And I do think, I said this in my review of Fields of Arle that I did a little while ago, I do think that in Fields of Arle, I sometimes feel like the puzzle's beyond me, as in like I feel like I'm doing the things that I should be doing, but I forgot a part, but I missed a thing, or oh man, I miscalculated a thing, and the puzzle's just always like slightly beyond my reach of understanding or figuring out, so to speak. And I also mentioned that in Fields of Arle, like I have a looming sense that Fields of Arle is solvable because of how things come out. There's not really a ton of random in Fields of Arle. It's basically you get the same field, you get the same stuff showing up, you get the same things going. The only differentiation that you get in Fields of Arle really is if you play with the expansion. Actually, let me think about it. Are there any other sources of random in Fields of Arle? I guess your opponent is your fields is your randomness, what they block you from. But outside of the T traders is kind of the only other chaos element that exists. The T expansion. The T expansion adds a little bit of a random inside of there, but yeah, it kind of ends up being kind of a samey game. So I was very fearful that for Fields of Arle that'll be very solvable. And that made me not want to play it as much. I still play it, but it made me not want to play it as much because I didn't want to just kind of, suck all the blood out of it, all vampire style for that game. Man, what an analogy. But with that said, I feel like this game doesn't have as much of that problem because of the different decks. There's a lot of randomness, there's a lot of variance in what shows up and what comes out. The Elders is a little stagnant, and that made me a little bit sad. But outside of that, it's a lot more variability over here, which means it could be a lot more chaos too, because it means it's a lot more swingy. You might have a really great game with like 45 points in one game, and then in the next game you might end up with just like 22 points, just barely scraping by. And that might not feel great with the different swings. I feel like Fields of Arle is more like kind of streamlined with what you're doing. Like, you convert this into this and you convert that into this, and you do this with those things, and this lets you do more of those things. You convert these things to those things, and boom, points. Whereas in this game, it's kind of like, hey, you put your marker there, here's 5 points. And it's like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, great. All right, thanks. I like 5 points. And it's less kind of churn and burn on the conversions, but the trade-off is that this game has more chaos inside of it to kind of keep the variety going, whereas in Fields of Arle just has a lot of stuff going on to where you can get to the point of solving it, but by the time you solve for one, by the time you find one solution to the problem of how to win Fields of Arle, you realize that there's actually 12 branches to get to that same path, or 12 different other ways to get to the things, and those branches have branches. So while I feel like Fields of Arle does have an ultimate cap as far as how, you know, how to get to victory, I should say, I do feel that that cap is very high. Sorry, let me simplify those words. What I'm trying to say with that is that I feel like Fields of Arle is solvable, but I feel like the solvability is not like, you know, there's 3 different ways to win the game. It's more like the solvability is like there's 112 different ways to win Fields of Arle, but there's a finite number. Whereas in this game, I feel like there's no finite number because of the variance that you get from the different decks, and the fact that you can mix and match the decks. And because of the fact that you can, if you were motivated enough, you can shuffle up the elders and change those up. And I feel like that's great. I feel like that's great. And even when you play solo, it's not just the same solo game of just using 2 pieces. You can play on the advanced side, which the advanced side not only opens up the fact that you'll have 3 players, so you have six tokens blocking your board, but you also open up the other side of the copy action, because in the rulebook it calls out when you play on the advanced side of solo, you get to use this side of the copy action board. And this other side is really cool because if you do copy in this column, then you can only copy things in this column, which is nice. But that means that if I copy this with blue, so I can do a thing that red did, then when I play with yellow, then yellow won't be able to use this either. So I'm still kind of blocking myself off, and I'm still kind of getting that feeling of like limited space and limited things going, but without, you know, kind of making it too cramped, if you will. So I feel that's very great. I feel that's very cool. I appreciate that greatly. The fact that you have the solo side that you're playing with, but you play with this this extra board. And then of course the fact that I can play with his friends as well is really nice. I'm looking forward to actually bringing this out with my friend group to kind of see what they think about it and just kind of play it. I feel like this is I was gonna say I feel like this is kind of like a really good cozy game, but I don't know, like something about this game doesn't feel as cozy as Fields of Arle for some reason. And when I say cozy, I know it's like a term that makes people cringe or just kind of, you know, feel weird hearing me say it out loud. But I just mean like, you know, just kind of sit down, you know, just kind of till your land, you know, get your cows going, you know, get some sheep over here in Fields of Arle. Whereas this game is kind of like, all right, I got fish, I got wood, and I got money. I have a stock. I have a new stock. All right, elders eating food. And like I don't feel that same cozy connection, if you will. It just feels like I'm kind of running a machine. I'm running a company. That's what it feels like I'm doing here. Whereas in Fields of Arle, it feels like I'm running my family farm. So again, take that how you will. I don't really want to call that a negative or a positive. I think it's just different feelings from the games. But that's the reason why I want to kind of compare the two, because I have context for the two. My friend also wants me to play Agricola one day. I have not played Agricola. I've been able to avoid that somehow. But I have played Caverna. And I know that with Caverna, the cave versus cave Caverna, specifically the 2-player version. And with Caverna, I know there's a lot of variety that you get from the different cave pieces that can show up. And you can also add in the expansion that comes in the big box, which gives you more stuff to do things with. So all that goes on when I say that using my experiences with other Uwe Rosenberg games that are not just Patchwork, it is really cool to be able to see some of the other approaches that are lighter. Again, besides Patchwork, that are lighter, because in Caverna, I'll make the argument that Caverna is pretty, I would say, kind of edging more towards heavier weight, not heavyweight, but heavier weight. Whereas in this one feels like it was like kind of right smack dab in the middle. I can only imagine what Glass Road feels like, because people keep saying Glass Roads is like a great introduction. Well, I don't want to say introduction, but a great game to kind of get people that are new-ish to the board game hobby to get into playing, because it's not too imposing. So it's kind of nice to kind of play a game that feels like it has a lot to offer for people who are veterans, if you will, or people who have played this game a lot, or people who have seen a lot, or people who know their worker placements front and back. I'm not saying that I'm any of those things, but I can see how people who crunch into those kind of Euro style games really can get that from here. But also, it's not super intimidating for those who are newer, because it's simply, you know, hey, build a building, you know, take an elder and do the thing the elder says, put 2 forests in the spot. And it's just kind of a very approachable game. So I could definitely see me introducing this game to my family too, not just my board game friends, but yeah, that's all I'll say about that. All right. So if I had to give this game a rating, I think I would err on the side of giving this game a solid 8 out of 10. I don't know what I've ranked everything else, but I think that this game is kind of like a nice medium between playing something very simple which I can't think of anything simple to even throw out there as an example, versus playing something very heavy like Fields of Arle, that kind of give me that, like kind of relaxing into a board game feeling. And again, I know I said I don't get as much relaxation from playing this for some reason. I don't know. It's just something about the way it's set up doesn't feel like cozy. It's like, I gotta feed these elders, and I gotta build this building, and I gotta reforest because I keep cutting down trees. Whereas in Fields of Arle, I'll just feel it. I don't know. Just feel a little bit more relaxed, like I'm on a field. You know what it is? It's probably the animal meeples. That's what it is. This game lacks animal meeples. Well, I guess that's fish, but that's not the same. These are fish. You get like sheep and horses and cows in the other one. Come on. What's not to love in that one? All right, anyway. So my rambles aside, yeah, I think I'll give this game a solid 8 out of 10. I liked my experience with it. I think it's pretty good. It's pretty fun. I am definitely looking forward to trying out the campaign mode. The campaign mode of this is essentially you play 3 games back to back. And at the end of the first game, every building that you built on your board, you take out of the game completely. And then at the end of round 2, the second playthrough, same thing. Every building that you built, you take out of the game completely. And then on the last one, you still try to build what you have. You might run into situations where you don't have enough buildings, which is fine. And then you try to see if you can score 100 points or higher. And if you have scored 100 points or higher in a previous campaign playthrough, or a triple game playthrough, if you will, a series, then that becomes your new target. If you can beat that, then you win. If you don't beat that, then you lose. I really like the idea of, kind of building the buildings, trying to score the most points you can, and then kind of seeing if you can build on top of that without those buildings that you did. It kind of forces you to try new strategies and explore the decks a lot more. So I'm looking forward to trying that one out. I might do a live stream of me doing the campaign playthrough. I haven't decided on that yet. I think I'm leaning heavily towards doing it, so we'll see. But it'll be a pretty long video because I'm going to do it all in one shot if I can, of course. All right. So that said, yeah, campaign mode exists. I'm looking forward to trying that out. And that's going to be pretty much it for this video. So let me know what you all think of this game. Hopefully this has encouraged you to go out and get your own copy of the game. I know I was hesitant on getting it because I was like, do I really need another Fields of Arle? But I'm glad that this game is different enough from Fields of Arle for me to where I don't feel like this is kind of stepping on Fields of Arle's toes, or Fields of Arle is stepping on this game's toes. So yeah, that's it. All right, so thank you all very much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed it, and as always, I will see y'all whenever.